What's up, hackers? Welcome to Chill Code. My name is Taggart, and tonight I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this ever since we came up with the idea on Saturday. We are going to be writing we're going to be starting a brand new repository for Jupyter notebooks for the blue team. So often when you think about open source tooling for information security, the red team has a bunch. The blue team has some. But I have to say that there's a massive disparity between what's available for defenders that's free and open source and what's available for attackers. And so tonight we're going to try to at least slightly level the playing field. How are we going to do that? We're going to do that by starting to create some Jupyter notebooks, which we demoed on stream on Saturday, but we'll review them again tonight, that go through the processes that a blue teamer might have to undertake in a number of different scenarios. So what we're going to do, we want to start actually with something that Infinite Logins was requesting, which is what we were doing on Saturday. We were going through Windows event logs using Python, and so we're going to, hey Tater, hey Husky, good to see you. Yeah, so we're going to start by working that through. Now, if you want to play along at home, let me send the repo code to you. This repo is called, because I wasn't super creative, Blue Jupyter. But you can imagine a pretty rad logo for that, right? And so what we're going to do with Blue Jupyter is I want to essentially create a database of Jupyter notebooks for all sorts of different scenarios. So the first thing I want to do is create like an incident response folder, because that's kind of the first thing. Incident responses is where these Windows event logs would go. But before we even get that far, I just realized my microphone's a little far away. That's better. Before we even get that far, Blupiter, dude, Hater, as I was thinking this up, I actually thought about that. I was like, do I want to call it Blupiter? No, I do not. And then I was like, Jupyter Blue, but Jupyter Blue sounds like a Jaeger from Pacific Rim. So Blue Jupyter is what I landed on. So anyway, the first thing to note is that if you're working in Python, Python dependencies are hell. They just are. And most of the time what you'll see is recommendations to, set up a virtual environment to handle the dependencies, right? That you're installing the exact versions of things that you want in that virtual environment rather than installing it globally to your system. And that way, you're controlling exactly what you can expect in that project. And that's what we've done, but we've done it with a tool that we've demoed on the stream before, but I think it's worth introducing again, which is Poetry. Not like William Carlos Williams or Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, but Python-Poetry. It is a package and dependency manager for Python, and it allows really easy work, ergonomics when it comes to working with Python dependencies. So I'm a big fan, and what we've done so far with Poetry is we've initialized the Poetry project. We have added some dependencies. I'm actually about to add another one. And we have initialized the virtual environment, which is why my shell up here looks so crazy. What we're looking at there is... Actually, how many windows do I have open? Yeah, I will bring that back over. Give me... VS Code. Yeah, so that's why this shell looks so crazy. It's because I'm in a virtual environment right now. How do you install it? For Poetry, I think it's like... Yeah, there's just a there's just like a curl thing you send it to, and it'll do the installer for you. Tater, if you've been using PyEnv and Venv, I strongly recommend checking out Poetry. I know it's muscle memory after a while, getting used to whatever you're using to, create the virtual environments, but I strongly recommend checking this out just because, I don't know, I find it super easy, and it will also handle the packaging and publishing and deploying to PyPy. If you are creating a real deal Python package that you want installable by pip or by Poetry by someone else, you will be able to do that right from the Poetry CLI. Super, super handy. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to make a folder called Incident Response. And that's where I'm going to put the incident response stuff. That'll be our first category of things that we're going to deal with. There will be others like network investigations, things like that. I actually did a talk at one point about how to use Jupyter to do the Splunk labs, right? The boss of the SOC stuff, you can answer those questions using Jupyter if you just get the logs that they use for the boss of the SOC challenges. Now, obviously, that's a little bit funky. You don't want to use Jupyter as your sim, but if you just have a bunch of logs and you don't have a sim that they're in, it can be super handy to be able to throw them at something and be able to parse them. All right, so with that done, we have incident response. We're gonna go ahead and make dir incident response sysmon logs. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to be in incident response sysmon logs. Awesome. Now my prompt has gotten so long that it's not going to show me anything anymore, but that's totally fine. I can live with that. Now, I am going to kick things off with a... So let's back this up a little bit. The library that this whole thing hinges on is python-evtx. And it allows us to import Windows event logs into Python. The problem is that it's not super ergonomic. I know I'm using that word too much, but I don't love the way that it works, because it gives you like raw XML or it gives you an LXML library. It's not awesome. So instead, what we're gonna do is pass all of our data through a couple of different wrappers to make it way easier to work with. So the first one that we're gonna pass it through is Beautiful Soup. Beautiful Soup is a XML and HTML parser for Python, and don't get thrown off by the Python 2-esque styling of its documentation. Awesome. TechHoppy, I'm so glad that you're using poetry. So don't get thrown off by the Python 2 styling of Beautiful Soup. It is up to date, and it is one of those magic repositories. Every time I use it, it's just like, I can't believe this works. I can't believe it works exactly the way that I want it to. So that's exactly what we're going to use. So the first thing we're going to do is install it. And we're going to use Beautiful Soup 4 like this, but now we get to see how poetry works. So we're going to do poetry add and then Beautiful Soup 4. And let's take a look at the poetry.lock file as we do so. Just kidding, we're going to look at the pyproject.toml file. And what we're going to see is, as this thing gets added, this file gets updated. So if you're used to Fraggle 780, as always, these streams are getting cross-streamed to YouTube. So the VOD will be on Twitch for a little bit, but it will also be on YouTube forever and ever. Amen. So, Techno, we're not actually going to be doing too much web scraping on this, because what we're pulling in is the EVT, the Windows event logs. We're pulling this for this particular notebook, we're going to be pulling this from a static file rather than going out to the internet for stuff. But that being said, the principle is going to be very similar, because the events will be XML. And so we are still going to have to parse through a document tree to get the things out that we want. So kind of similar, but without the actual accessing the internet part of it. All right, so we have ourselves Beautiful Soup installed. And log scraping, exactly. And let me fire up a Jupyter lab session in here. Let me create another poetry shell down here. Let me get down into the incident response sysmon logs. I'll get into the same thing. Poetry shell. That won't work. I have to be up in the actual project directory to initialize the shell. Poetry shell. There we go. CD incident response sysmon logs. Now I've got two invisible prompts, but it is what it is. And for this one, this is going to just be tiny, because I don't need... I'm going to fire off Jupyter Lab. Uh-oh. Joshua Smith, thank you so much for the YouTube subscription. Okay, so here we are. We have ourselves Jupyter Lab running, and it's running inside of the Poetry shell, or the Poetry virtual environment, I should say. And we're going to create a new notebook. And yes, it's going to be Python 3. And we're going to rename it to Sysmon Stats. And I just want to make sure that this is all working, so print hello world. Hey, chat, do me a favor, shout out if the text is too small. I know that I've got a lot of stuff going on the window. So you just let me know if I need to zoom in or zoom out or something. Alright, so Python's working. Love it. Before we get into anything crazy, though, I am gonna write myself a helper module for this. Because I know that I'm going to be doing crazy crap with my EVTX stuff. So to do that, I am going to just create a new Python module right in here, and I'm going to use VS Code to do the editing on that. That is the plan. So get into incident response. Now see this IPNB checkpoint folder? I'm going to actually ignore those in gitignore at some point, but for now it's fine. Make a new file, and we'll call it sysmon.py. Yeah, awesome. So this module is what we're going to use to build out how we import the event files and how we present them in a really clean way. Now, this is also a great opportunity to consider some object-oriented programming. Why is that? Sysmon. Let's go look at Sysmon. So all Sysmon events are going to have roughly the same event shape, but each one is going to have slightly different data in it. For example, the network connection event is going to have an event ID like everything else. It's going to have a system created time like everything else, but it will also have a source IP, a destination IP, a source port, a desk port. Catch my drift? So what we can do is we can create a parent class of Sysmon events, right? And then we can create child classes that inherit the properties that we know everything has, but then specify extra properties that we know that those specific event IDs have. That's the plan, and that's a good OOP design. One of the things I've noticed in security programming is that, you know, hackers aren't always the best programmers, and I'm not claiming that I am by any stretch of the imagination the best programmer, but I come from a software development background before I did InfoSec, right? And so I want to try as much as I can when building these tools to do them the right way, right? That's why we're using a dependency manager. That's why we're going to do this in an object-oriented way. We're abstracting our stuff into a module that's easy to maintain. That's the basic idea. Before we go any further, though, let's get some Windows events to actually use. To do that, I'm going to pull, I think I did this, documents, try hack me, Sysmon. Yeah. Why did that not work? This is the hollow box I was working on. There we go. Yeah, let's get some of these EVTXs in here that we can play with. I'm gonna just copy the hunting Metasploit over into my downloads folder for now. And then in my terminal, I keep using tmux shortcuts where I don't have them. I'm gonna make an examples folder, and then cp went home downloads hunting Metasploit examples. Great. Now I have myself a hunting Metasploit EVTX file that I can use for this. All right, let's begin by importing all of our dependencies. So we know that for this we're going to know from EVTX, import EVTX. I always forget how this is supposed to work. Is it Python EVTX? Python EVTX. No. Python EVTX. I really thought it was EVTX like that. We'll see how it goes. It is EVTX. I don't know why Windows Python is being a jerk about this. Hey, look, if I have to switch over to Vim, fine. I was just trying to be friendly with VS Code, but I'll work in Vim. Which dependencies will be in use? For this particular part, so we've installed dependencies that the notebook will use, but we're not at that yet. But we will be importing beautiful soups, so that's going to be from BS4 import beautiful soup, just like that. Oh, same deal. Interesting. So VS Code is going to be like a huge, it's going to make so much annoying noise just because it doesn't know how to resolve the dependencies in the virtual environment. Oh, it's going to suck. Oh well, it is what it is. If it gets too much of a problem, like I said, we'll move over to Vim. Now we're going to define our class of sysmon event. Create a constructor. And this is where I'm gonna hand it raw XML. It needs self. Been a minute since I've written OOP in Python. So, by the way, I don't have this open sourced, but one of the biggest projects like this I've ever undertaken was writing a proper domain specific language for interacting with the Rapid7 API for Nexpose and Inside VM. They have an API, and they have like an OP API spec for it in Python, but it sucks. And so I have written specific Python calls to like interact with, if you use Nexpose as a vulnerability management system, or if you use Inside VM. Like I have all these endpoints that were designed specifically to work the way a human would with those endpoints, to the point of like scheduling scans, adding assets, generating reports, all this stuff. It's a lot. yet another reason why I say that analysts benefit from learning some Python, because there's a lot of stuff that you can interact with in better ways once you have that in your tool belt. All right, self.event ID, that's something that everything is going to have, right? But first we're going to do soup equals beautiful soup, and we're going to give it the raw XML as the thing to parse, and we're going to give it a parser specifically of LXML. That's the parser that we're going to use. So we're going to do soup.eventID.text, because it's going to have a text value. Let me close the file browser here. Ready? And I've got my notebook up, actually, don't I? I did. Where'd you go? There you are. This thing is in the wrong location. Where is it? It's in sysmon logs. That's right. Why can't it see? Oh, because it's not saved. What? Why can't it see the Python file? Accuser, what's blue on? I don't... Oh, what's Jupyter? Jupyter is this interface right here. It's a tool that allows you to create interactive notebooks of code. So obviously I've got a cell here where I'm running some code, but I can also, and this is, I think, really cool and why I'm so excited about this, I can say, write in Markdown. We'll do a general statistical analysis of sysmon logs. All you need is the exported ebtx file, and you're good. Now I have Markdown, but I cannot, for the life of me, figure out why I can't see because it's not there. What the? Ah, it was made one level up. Well, that's annoying. Let's just fix that. You can refactor your entire IOC generator pipeline to use Jupyter. Oh man, now you're starting to think like me. My dream. Yeah, I mean, my dream is basically to run the SOC on Jupyter notebooks for anything that isn't, you know, directly in a tool. And even for stuff that is, that I don't like the way that it's working. You know, anything that I'm not getting the deeper data analysis. Right, and the thing is that these document themselves, and not in the hacky way of like comments in the code. It actually documents itself. So imagine a new analyst presented with one of these notebooks with deep explanation of what each step is doing. Now all of a sudden they can run the thing, but they're also learning how it works as they do so. Okay. Hopefully the notebook can see the... Fantastic. That's what I wanted. The reason I wanted that was because I want to yeah, it's event ID.text. And we're also going to, inside of the sysmon event class, we're going to create a class method and we're going to say def. Actually, just a static method. And so we're grouping the static method within the sysmon event class mainly for organization. It's not going to be available as a method for an instance of the sysmon event, but it's something that I want inside of here just for organization because I'm still using the module. And all I want to really export from here is this class. So that's just kind of an organizational thing. I'll do this very often where there's stuff that like is going to help with the administrivia of using the class. I'll put it inside as a static method or a class method, even if it's not going to be part of the instance of the class itself. Okay. And this part is tricky. This is where we need EVTX. With open file path as F, so that should load the file path. And then this part gets a little bit stranger. Records XML equals yes, F4. Actually, that's wrong. I'm sorry. That's how that goes. And we're doing this as a list comprehension to turn it into a list because the records is a generator, or in f.records, like that, is a generator. And I don't want a generator, I want the actual records. This is one of those things, Husky, right, if you're paying attention, that Nim would actually be a lot more clean about doing, because I could just straight up return, the Nim version of a list comprehension on this. It would also be way faster. But that's okay. And let's do just that much. Let's just test that much, and I can do that within this notebook. So I'm going to try from sysmon import sysmon events. Works. Great. And now I'm going to try sysmon events dot load event XML. And I'm going to send it to examples / hunting metasploit EVTX. And I'll save these as XML records. Well, it's not erroring out, so that's good news. Okay. So far, so good. So what we have here are raw EVTX events. Or actually, we have, sorry, that's wrong. We have raw XML. That's what we have so far. Now, to make this even more ergonomic, this is kind of the load event XML, and I'm going to leave this in here in the event that we want that for whatever reason. But I'm going to also say load events. And for that, I'm going to say records XML. It wasn't apparent how the code runs, but it makes sense. You're creating the class methods and import the file to call the methods. Yes, I'm essentially what I'm doing is I'm using Jupyter as a REPL, a read eval print loop. And that's actually how you've seen me use interactive Python a bunch as well for development like this. So here, what we're going to do is sysmon event dot load event XML. So we're loading the XML here in load events, and then we are going to, this is going to be kind of silly at first. By the way, this is very similar to how we did the creation of cards in backdoors and breaches. When we did the Python version of backdoors and breaches, we created a parent method of a procedure card, right? Or actually of a card. And then we had kind of a conditional for which constructor we were going to use depending on the text of the card type, right? Whether it was an inject or a procedure or a kill chain card or whatever. We're going to do something very similar here based on event ID. But to start, we're going to just return, and this is where this gets really cool, sysmon event for R in records XML. And I'm going to store the raw XML inside of the component. All right, I'm gonna re-import this. And now we're gonna try this. Events, actually I shouldn't have cut all that out. Events equals, let me close the browser here. And we're going to say load events the same way, and let's see what happens. Let's restart the kernel. Load event XML. Oh, I did something stupid, didn't I? I'm gonna have to restart and run. Kernel, restart and run all cells. I should be able to set auto reload for this, and I will do that in a second. Hey, this one's not erroring out though. Ah! Poop. Do I need to install a parser library? It's possible. Let's see. Ooh, wait a second. I think I made another mistake. No, I didn't. It's the raw XML. That's correct. Couldn't find a tree builder with the feature you requested. Do I need to install a parser library? Maybe. So let me see if I need to manually install XML. Let's add it via poetry. And just want to make sure that's looking correct. Yes, it is. Fantastic. So even though that's nice to know that poetry is smarter than NPM, right? If even if I'm a few folders deep into my project, I can run poetry add and it'll still add it to the project's toml without being annoying about me being in the wrong folder. All right, cool. So I should have LXML now. Start cells. I always get so excited when stuff works, just because, I don't know, most of programming is spent getting it wrong, and so when things go this swimmingly, it's rare. All right, let's take a look at events. It says that we have ourselves a sysmon.sysmon event. And let's ask for the event ID. Now it's a string. We could turn it into a... We could turn it into an integer. And as a matter of fact, I think I do want to do that. I'll cast this as an integer. So now that we know that's working, we're going to reproduce some of the work that we did on Saturday, where you know what? I actually want self.raw. I actually want the soup rather than the... Could you update the repo so I can work through too, please? TechNotB, chill. I will do it, but I will do it once we get to a place where I feel like I can push code. Yeah. This is going to make it very large. I may not want the raw, but I definitely want the soup. See? Choices like that. I want to have that sort of... We're kind of real-timing this one, so I want to have that sorted before I commit to history. And we'll also create some doc strings here. Programming the right way is so tedious, but worthwhile. Now, let's take a look at... Hey, the Guar. Good to see you, friend. This project's for you, pal. So let's take a look at... So all of this for monitoring Windows 7 events? This isn't Windows 7. This is Sysmon. Sysmon is additional logging that you can install for Windows. You can do it for Windows 10. You can do it for Windows 11. No. Don't apologize. It's okay to ask questions. It's good to ask questions. But no, this isn't just for Windows 7. Take a look at Sysmon. Basically, what you can do, it's amazing that this is free, but it is additional logging that you can enable for Windows systems, and it tracks a lot of the things that defenders are going to care about on a system. Process creations, network connections, registry events, image loads, named pipe creation, Cobalt Strike users. Yes, Sysmon is so necessary, although I think we would be appalled at the number of organizations that do not have it deployed. Listen to Husky. If it's his worst nightmare, then it's good for defenders to have it. That's exactly what we want. We don't want the defenders or the attackers to have an easy time of it. And you have to be not just using it, but ingesting the logs and then detecting the things that you care about in it, right? But this is kind of step one toward that, where if you've had something, this is a great threat hunting tool that we're building. So, say that something happened on a system, or you have suspicions of something happening on a system, you can descend onto an endpoint with this notebook, right, or this library of notebooks, and run these kind of automated procedures, and you'll get a breakdown of what's going on the system. There are some other tools that do similar things, but they don't have the reporting power that I care about, and that's what I'm trying to build out here. Okay, so we're returning Sysmon events. This is the reason, the Guar. This is the reason. Okay, so we're loading event XML. This is all good. We're loading the soup. And then, what else does every Sysmon event have? Could you install this to monitor your network at work? So the thing with Sysmon events is it runs on the Windows endpoint itself. Then what you have to do is send the logs somewhere. Windows event forwarding is configurable by group policy. Well, we're just doing a whole, like, Windows administration how-to tonight, huh? So what you want to do is you want to configure this to send Windows events to a specific destination. And that destination is likely going to be a SIM, right? Like Splunk or Graylog, QRadar, or Elk, right? The security onion, right? Using the Elk stack. Or if you're sending it to a managed SOC, something like that, if you're paying for an MSSP that is going to be handling those events for you, but you should also have visibility into them. So that's the idea. You set up Sysmon, and then you set it up with Windows Event Forwarding. So Sysmon generates the logs on the endpoint, Event Forwarding gets them off the endpoint. So what we're doing tonight is we're kind of assuming that that second part isn't happening the way that we want, or that we need to get on the endpoint for some other reason. And what happens then? Well, we can come in with these tools and review in a more focused way. All right, so other things that the XML has. We have the event record ID. We also have the time created, and that I care a lot about, but one of the things that's annoying about the time created is that it is actually, the system time is an attribute, right? It's not inside of the event ID the way that the actual event ID is. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna do soup.timecreated.attrs and then system time is the attribute that we're trying to pull. So sysmon is like Windows logs with steroids, and then you forward pipe those to a tool to analyze them. Exactly right. So to explain what we're doing here a little bit, let me restart and run this so we have soup to show you exactly what we're looking at. Yeah, kernel, restart, and run all cells. You know, I was saying that I was going to do like inheritance, but I might... Does it lowercase it? I think it lowercases it. I think Beautiful Soup does. It lowercases all the attributes. Hey, Pat Kilo. So it's a Python script that hooks into sysmon. Could you also do a PowerShell script to accomplish this task? So I don't even have to do it. I don't have to make a PowerShell script to accomplish this task, because am I running sysmon on this thing? I know I am in my VMs, but I can't remember if I installed sysmon on my host. Microsoft, Windows. Ah, shame on me. My actual host doesn't have it, but my Flare VM does. But without going into too much of a tangent here, Pat, there is such a thing as get-win-event. And so with get-win-event, I can actually, pull down whatever I need out of PowerShell. Here's the trick, though, and we're not quite at the part with extracting this data as to why this method is so powerful. But what I'm eventually going to get to is I'm going to be able to make charts and statistical analyses of all of the events, and that's really why I'm doing this in Python and Jupyter, because it's not just extracting the logs. I want to analyze them and automate the analysis of them. That's the part that Python's going to do for me that PowerShell doesn't really have the juice to do. Right, that's exactly what we're going to do. It is very funny, Technobeat, to hear you say that, because I am not. I'm like a Windows survivor. Most of my professional career has been spent doing Linux. I am certified in Linux. I am not any of those things in Windows. When I became a security analyst, I knew that I was going to have to be really, really good with Windows in an enterprise environment. So I just, buried my nose in books and practiced. But thank you for saying so. Okay, so we're loaded soup. We should be getting system time now. Yeah, okay, so that actually worked. So if I ask for soup, now I'm getting the whole thing, and we can start to see what these look like. This is great. So already we actually have a lot of ability. But we haven't even done the cool stuff yet, right? With like pandas and everything. We'll get there. But okay, so an event ID. This is an event ID 3. So with an event ID 3, we are going to do inheritance here. We are going to do that. But I'm trying to think about the best way to do this. Pandas and NumPy and Plotly. Plotly is my secret weapon. With Plotly, I'm able to create very effective, very quick charts that make it easy to review data inside of a Jupyter notebook. And this is why I am doing this. Because this allows you to see patterns in a visual way. It allows you to identify anomalies. This is why, when we're working in Splunk, the first thing that I do, and the Guar knows this because I've been pestering him on his stream when he does Splunk about this, where like the first thing you do as soon as you have a data set is you pipe that thing to a time chart and look for your baseline, what's weird, and then look for anomalies on that, look for spikes. Because if you find a spike, you gotta ask yourself what happened. Maybe it's benign, but maybe not. Okay. So we have time created, and look, we can see now all the other stuff that we have in here. So other stuff that all of the sysmon events are going to have. They're going to have a process ID. All of them are going to have a process ID. So we're going to put that in here as well. Self dot PID equals soup dot. Now this gets a little bit interesting, because notice that all of this data stuff is inside of the event data tag. I know it's not indented, so it's kind of hard to see, but all of these data elements are within the data tag. So I have to search by attribute for the one that I want for this. To make that happen, I'm going to create a soup dot, well, let's actually see it here, and you'll see how this works. So soup dot event data, right? I can bring it down there. And then what we're going to do next is select one. And this works very much like a query selector does in JavaScript. We're going to use data and then name equals process ID. And select one just returns the first match. Select would return a list. I don't want a list, I just want one. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Select event data, select one, name process ID. Okay. And let's go back to the event data to see what else we have. The Guar, great question. So is self accessing a library? What we're looking at here with this double underscore init double underscore is what's known as a constructor. The constructor is for the class sysmon event. So we're going to create a whole bunch of objects, right? Every one of those objects is an instance of the sysmon event class. To create those instances of the objects, we use a function, a special function called a constructor. Self is the self-referential variable to the object that we're creating. And then later we can create methods that the object has, which will also have a self parameter, which refers to the object itself. So basically what we're doing here in this constructor is we're inventing variables that will be attached to the object. So we're giving it a soup, we're giving it event ID, we're giving it a time created, a PID that we can access easily. So for example, if I look at events 0 over here, the Guar, I think you missed this. See how it says that it's a sysmon event? Because I've constructed it with my sysmon event here. I'm creating a list of them with my load events. Which means that this sysmon event, this object, should have an event ID property, and indeed it does. That's what we're doing with the constructor, and self refers to the instance of the object that we're currently working with. Really good questions. Really good questions. This is probably the most in the weeds computer sciencey stuff that I have done with a group since departing the classroom. So I'm having a blast. I hope you are. So the source IP, source hostname, stuff like that, that's going to be important, but only for event ID 3. Try Vanilla.js. I love your name. They also known as class instance attributes. For example, every instance of an RPG character. Yeah. Right, when we're talking about object-oriented programming, instance attributes is one term for them. It's a very Python-y term for them. And then very commonly you'll hear the terms properties and methods. Properties are things that an object is, characteristics, and methods are things that an object does. I think of them as adjectives and verbs. Or, yeah, adjectives and verbs. Vanilla.js, did you catch our JS stream a couple weeks ago, where we actually wrote a rock paper scissors app in Vanilla.js? Not the Vanilla.js library, but the like literally just doing straight JavaScript with no libraries. Pat Kilo, thank you so much for the follow. If not, you should go check it out. If not, I think the VOD's probably gone, but you can always check it out on YouTube. All right, so we have process ID. It should also have a data structures and algorithms interview prep browsing Twitch. Oof. That sounds rough. That sounds like every time I hear something like that, I am reminded why I didn't actually major in comp sci. And image should also be there for pretty much everything. So we'll go ahead and grab that as well. Ah. Now, that's about it when it comes to stuff that we know everything is going to have. There's one other kind of never mind. We'll get to that. The next thing I was thinking about in a second. But, okay, this is about it for the, like, raw sysmon events. Okay. Now, we have to do something else, which is, we have to create subclasses for the different kinds of events. There are different kinds of events in sysmon. They have different IDs. Right? Process creation, process changed to file creation time. That's kind of wild. Network connection, sysmon service state change, image loaded, create remote thread. And each of these are going to have slightly different values in them. So I need to create these different classes. There's a bunch of them. What is it, like 27 in all? And so I want to just make a few key ones first. Yeah, Husky, it does. Create remote thread does have its own sysmon entry. And it blows me away why anyone would think that it's okay to not have this turned on and alerting on it. Yeah, between that and the named pipe, I mean, that's a lot right there. And even the image loaded becomes very, very handy, and good detections on the registry events, right, will detect very common persistence. For example, for the MS HTML 0 day that was out last week, CVE 2021-40444, right? It turned out that all of the weaponized versions of that exploit were writing to kind of the same registry keys. So a good detection would have been to look for those registry events. Pacquiao, great question. This is exporting to a file. So what we're... good luck, Technopi. So what we're doing in this project, Pat, is we are reading from an exported EVTX file. Now, an EVTX file comes from, too many things closed, the Windows Event Viewer, right? Which is built into Windows. And if I were to export any of these logs, I would get an EVTX file. EVTX files are binary blobs, unfortunately. They're not plain text, which is why we have to use this EVTX library to kind of re-extract the data and get the XML that the log events are stored as out of it and then make them usable again. So the scenario would be, we have a machine that is exhibiting curious, maybe malicious behavior. It's definitely sus. We don't have the logs getting sent to a central location, so what do? The incident response team is going to descend on this machine. We're going to lock it down, but we're going to come in with our suite of tools, including this new one that we're building, Blue Jupyter. And with Blue Jupyter, we're going to first export the sysmon logs to an EVTX file. And maybe we don't need all of them. Maybe we just need a specific time slice, and you can get those from the EVTX, the event viewer, and export those. Then you can use this tool to perform your analysis. All right, so we have, I want to at least create a couple of subclasses here tonight before we run out of time. So let me show you what this looks like. We're going to make a class process create, which is going to inherit from sysmon event. See that right there? This is the syntax for class inheritance. But it actually, we still have more work to do because this isn't enough. We still have to build a new constructor. And additionally, we have to pass the thing through Am I getting that wrong? Let me check something real quick. This is the Backdoors and Breaches Python project. Nope, totally had that right. Oh, problem was I forgot a colon. There we go. So what we're doing here, this is a little bit weird, but we're basically, before we start constructing our process create sysmon event, we are piping our data through the parent constructor. And that allows us to make a new constructor is not necessary if you won't modify the constructor that you inherit. Yeah, but I am modifying it. Because I want it to have these properties, but also the ones that I want to add. Oh, Pat. Oh, Pat. We did a whole Vim session. And If you watch it, I promise that you will love Nim. Nim. Vim. We did one on Nim too, but that's a different situation. I once felt as you did. And then through several odd turns, I found myself using Vim more and more. And now I love it. Thank you for the testimonial, Husky. Okay, so we're passing our raw XML through the super constructor. What that does is we are going to get all of these properties into our self right after this, but now we can extend it. So for a process create, let's go find an event. Let's say event 1 equals, Husky, this is for you too, filter lambda e.event id equals 1. What we've just done is we have created a list of events where the event ID is 1. And by accessing the soup, we can take a look at what exactly I'd care about pulling out of event ID 1. Oh, this should be image, shouldn't it? And here we're going to do self.soup because it's going to have the soup property already from our constructor. And then this is, you know, what you just saw me do with the list filter lambda. That's because I do this a lot. I do this daily, or almost daily, for work that I'm interested in doing, for log parsing, or, you know, just looking at interesting kinds of data. I used to do this all the time for NetFlow, especially, you know, massive data sets that I just wanted a quick way of filtering through. So yeah, it's essentially muscle memory at this point. And I want to point that out, actually. All of you who are learning how to program in whatever language, you're going to see demonstrations where somebody's super fluent, right? Where they're able to just fire something off, and it looks like, oh, and you're going to think, oh my god, I'm never going to be able to do that. First of all, you are, and two, it's not skill, it's just practice. It's just that it's ingrained in there, right? There's lots of stuff that I have to look up constantly. It is just sheer chance that I haven't had to look up any Python documentation yet tonight, but I'll be very surprised if we get through it without me having to look something up. And that's how that goes. It's okay to not know. It's not okay to not know and stay ignorant. But yeah, I think that when you're starting to learn, it can be intimidating to see some of these really, really deep demonstrations and think, I'm never going to get there. You are going to get there. You are. But there is no shortcut. So event ID 1 we have process ID, which we are already getting, but it's also going to have command line, which is super important. Command line. Where'd my tunes go?
People just...
There we go. Oh, I should also, by the way, I should be pulling this to say .text. Now, we're also getting to this point here where I'm repeating myself a bunch. You see where I'm repeating myself a bunch? I'm doing a lot of this event data.select1. That's not awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refactor this a little bit and turn this into a... Can I do inheritance? I'm doing inheritance right here. Pat, I'm creating a process creation here. But for what I'm doing for the refactor is, yes, I'm going to create a method exactly right. And this is also going to be a nice safety check for me. So in the event something goes wrong, I'm just going to return an empty string. So actually, let's call it extract event data, not XML text. Perfect. So what we're going to do is then try to return soup.eventData.select1 query.text and accept return empty quotes. Now, with all of this, this is my favorite VS Code thing, by far, is the multiple cursors. Sysmon event dot extract event data self.soup. There we go. I gotta rig the self is wrong over here, but otherwise good shape. And that's how we do that. And I don't need the dot text on the end of this. Yeah, there's a couple of different ways to do it. So if I highlight self and do Control D, it will select the next one, and I can keep doing Control D to get as many cursors as I want. Or if I select say image and then Control Shift L, it will automatically select all of them. And now I have multiple cursors and escape to get rid of them. So I don't need this. I do need command line. And I also need parent command line. Right, Control-Shift-P is select all instances. That's right. These are also all listed up here in selection. Oh, I think Control-Shift-L was the select all. Yeah. Isn't Control-Shift-P the yeah, that's the command pane. Oh, that's what you're saying. I get you. I get you. Select all. You can, like, Yes, got it. That's what you were saying. Oh, user is actually also going to be pretty much everything as well. So let's put that up there. And then command line. What else do we have for process creation that we're going to care about right now? I do care about integrity level for the process creation. Hey, chat, Windows quiz. What does integrity level refer to? This is some Windows sysinternals, you know, deep magic. Yes, how trustworthy a process is. That is actually correct. An integrity score or an integrity level is a shortcut for permission level. There's if you think about all the different ways that, oh hey GoPro, if you think about all the different ways that a Windows process can get instantiated, you know, it's not super simple to decide like what level of permissions it should have. Consequently, there are a whole bunch of rules around how an integrity level is established. And because those rules are so complicated, that's like why we have the integrity level, to be a shorthand for this is what it can do. Don't worry about why, this is what it can do. There's a lot. This is why, like, every time I do this, it's like, it's unbelievable to me how much more complicated Windows is than Linux. Yeah, Husky's saying it exactly correctly. We do also want parent image. Alrighty. Parent image. And hashes we'll leave alone for the moment. I don't really care about hashes. CD dash in Linux seems to be. Yeah, man, it's the back button on your remote control. By the way, Git has one too. If you do git checkout dash, it'll bring you back to your previous branch. Oh, I do want the user ID, but that's security. I might have to do something a little bit different for this one. Old PWD. Yeah, that's right. I don't know why I did that this whole time. User ID equals self.soup.security adders user ID. All right, so we have a process creation subclass now. Hard one. Now the trick is, how are we going to build this? this is a little bit tricky too, but this is where we're actually going to make a yet another static method. And we're actually going to pull this out a little bit more, where I'm no longer going to have soup inside of a init. And again, Technob, if you're still here, this is why I don't commit until I have like kind of a certain working level. Oh man, Guar, said changed my life. But yeah, so I'm actually gonna have this right here, and then oh, we're gonna create a global variable. Haven't done this yet. Oh, but it is. So this is kind of cool. What we're going to do is we're going to create a really clever conditional to conditionally build the right kind of sysmon event. So we're creating a dictionary here where event ID 1 is process create, and then we can make others, but for now we're just going to do process create. And so in our build event, we're going to say if soup dot event ID there's no reason to make these strings, but I feel weird about using integers as dictionary keys, so is that crazy? Is that a really hard to read way to do this? Am I too in my head about this? Let me go through what I'm doing here. So I've created this build event, and what it's doing is it's pulling in the raw XML and it's creating the beautiful soup. And then we're extracting the event ID from it because we know we have that coming in. Now, if the event ID is one of the keys in this dictionary, right, which in this case just has one, then we are going to use that specific class constructor with the soup, and that's what we will end up doing. Oh, actually, I did need to do that. Soup. Yes, good. Anyone know why I'm getting rid of the self.soups in here? It's a very silly reason, but I think it'll matter over time. Every time you do a self dot, it's a lookup, which means that you're asking code to perform an operation. But I don't have to do that if I already have the same data here. So we accidentally made the process a lot more computationally efficient because we're getting rid of all of these lookups. Okay. Now, if I wanted to be a little bit clearer about this, here's what I would do. I would say, and then we would say return constructor. So whatever the constructor is that we are pulling out of the dictionary, that's what we'll use. Otherwise, it'll just be a raw, who cares, sysmon event. Let's try just that much. And see how we do. Restart and run all cells. Process create is not defined. Yeah, there's a scoping problem there. Well, whatever. Let's just make it a global. If that's the scoping problem, then we'll make it a global up here. And an ordering thing? Oh, damn. It is. I actually wonder if I could have put that in here if I had ordered this differently. But that's not going to work either because I need this to inherit. Nuts. I might have to build a separate helper function. Make this not a class method. So I don't know if that problem was clear, but basically it's a sequencing problem. I was trying to reference process create before it was defined. That's no good. And then I couldn't like move things around in order because everything is so self-referential or cross-referential. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build a separate function for load events, right? That's not part of any of the classes. And Uh-oh. Let me think that through for a second. So this is where some reasoning comes in. So I can't build event is the problem. But when I do load events, okay. What I have learned is that these functions cannot be static methods inside of and that's fine. They can't be inside the sysmon event because they're going to have to rely on, well, load event XML can be, but these won't be able to because both of these are going to have to rely on being able to access more than one class. So we're going to pull these out. And clean up this indentation. Clear the static method and clean this up just a little bit more. So load event XML. That'll be a helper function, but we're not really going to use that other than we're going to use it here. Now, load events. This actually comes after, because we're going to use build events in it. Perfect. Now, we're going to do event types equals 1 process create. Now we're cooking. So inside of this, and actually because this is a global, I should all caps it. That's just the convention for constants and globals. So in, not sysmon event, but event types. Yes, 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 yes. Event types. Good. Good. And then now that that's all sorted, we have to fix load events a little bit. First of all, it's not sysmon event load event XML. It's whatever this is. And then it's not sysmon event as the constructor anymore. It's build event, because we're referencing this function. All right, now we have all of our helper functions set up. And what this means is we're going to have to import two things. Actually, no, we don't. We only have to import load events. That's pretty clean, all things considered. It took a little bit of blood, sweat, and tears to get there, but look what we have now. And let's see, just... Okay, they're all called sysmon events. How many events do we have? 860. Okay. Let's see if there's Darn. Something went wrong with our constructor. Oh, right, of course. Well... Event types ID. Alright, I'm gonna hack this a little bit. We're gonna print the ID. Kernel. Oh, that's obviously the problem. Look what I did. I forgot to get the text. I didn't go down far enough. Hey, congratulations. Should have got rid of that print, but it's okay. Aha! Okay, now we're looking good. And that's exactly what we wanted. So now you see that we are getting process create objects rather than straight up sysmon event objects. So we are getting proper process create. Work? No. But let's see. Can I get command line? Sure can. Can I get the PID? Sure can. Can I get the image? Sure can. Ooh, that should be text. Why wasn't it? Oh, because it should say parent image. Oh, right. This should actually be extract event data. You know, it's like, look, we haven't even gotten really to the Jupyter part of this, right? But just getting this library set up the way that we want is... That's better. Okay. Let's do one more. Let's do network connection. Which doesn't exist yet, but it's about to. And then we'll have the ability to start putting down some actual analysis code here. So it won't be... Let's take a look at event ID 3. And let's look at event 3.soup just to see all that's in there. Okay. So the user ID is in there still. I might move this up to the top level, because I think everything's going to have that. Okay, so it has user ID. What else do we need? This is where it gets interesting, right? Source IP, source host name, source port name, destination IP, destination port, destination host name, destination port name. This stuff is really, really cool. So this is the unique data that we're going to pull for the network connect. So say source IP, and we just got to modify this to say source IP, and it is case sensitive, so be careful with that. We're going to say source port, and I'm doing my best, by the way, to emulate the same variable names that you would see in Splunk for this kind of logging data. Source port. And I'm gonna only care about IPv4 right now. Is anybody in chat actually using IP6? That's what I thought. Okay. Now we have a couple of events to work with. We have process create. We have... Yeah, I think this is good to start with. This is good to start with. And let me just confirm that it's all working the way that I would hope. And then we will push some code. So that was what, 7-8 seconds for how many events? 860. So like, it's not the most performant, but it's not bad. Now, now that we have that going on, let's actually import the rest of our stuff. Import botly.express as px, import pandas, and what else do I need? What else do I need? I feel like there's something else really important that I'm forgetting to import. No? Maybe not? You know what? I think not, because I imported everything else I needed from here. I made the module so I wouldn't have to import the rest of the stuff. I think this is it. Okay, so what are some questions, especially blue teamers, let's ask some questions. What are some things that you would want to know about the shape of the data once you have all of the events loaded? Oh, right, that's the other thing that I wanted is Here it is. This is the thing I needed to look up. Python get object methods, or get object properties. Every time vars that is how we get, this is what we're going to use to produce a data frame object. And actually, I'm going to make this a method inside of the class, the parent class, not process create. Basically, I want to be able to reproduce the class as a dictionary, because the dictionary is what Pandas is going to use to create the data frame object. So to do that universally for all the different kinds of event objects, what I'm going to do is create a method called, oh, actually, I should see, because there is a way to produce it. I always forget what this is. Props, is it? No. Oh, maybe just vars would work. Would vars literally just work? Do I even have to do this? Oh man, maybe I don't. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so here's how we're gonna make the data frame. The data frame is the thing that we want to study. That's what's going to store all of the information. So df equals and what we're going to create is a list comprehension, and the list comprehension is going to be vars e, or e in events. And that's going to turn every one of these events into a dictionary. Now you might ask, wait a second, Taggart, you just spent all this freaking time writing classes to define these sysmon events the right way. Why in the world would you be turning them right back into a dictionary? I know it seems a little bit counterintuitive, but this is actually a really clean way of defining the data that I want so that I can turn it into a dictionary, one. And two, I want this module to be flexible enough so that if you don't want to do it this way, but you still want access to the sysmon data, you can have it in any shape you want. That's why I wrote this module here. When you write code like this, you can't just think about how you want to use it. You're trying to build the thing in a way so that it can be used in a lot of different ways. That's, I think, the strategy I'm pursuing here. Yes, I'm going to use it with a data frame, but you might not. Import pandas as PD was the part I forgot to do. Wow, that was fast. df.shape. 860 rows, 15 columns. Now let's look at df.head. There it is. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we have the data frame pulled out as much as we want. Now these are all event IDs 3, so there's not going to be a command line in this one. But now we can ask some questions. Thank you, Pat. Thank you so much for hanging out. Baguar or anyone else who's hanging out, does anyone have any questions that we might want to ask using our ability to analyze data now that we have it? While I commit the code. No worries, Cinder Remedy. Good to see you. What dependency did we add? I think it was LXML. And then we're going to also add the PyCache and IPYNB checkpoint folders. IPNY checkpoints. Yes. Wow. It's been a long time since hiragana for me. So, hold on a second. I want to try to do it though. Was that katakana? No, that's definitely hiragana. Or not? Help me out. Okay. It's a mix of both? What's going on? Timu. Kimuti. I'm trying really hard. For this follow. First three are katakana. Oh, Kimuchi des. Is that what's going on? Kimuchi des. Well, konbanwa. Genki des. I took a year and a half of Japanese in college, and I internalized basically none of it. No. I should know more than I do. I know enough to demonstrate what a beautiful language it is, especially compared to Mandarin, which I know a little bit better. For example, this is like the sentence I use to demonstrate it, which is it's just so mellifluous. It's like, this is my car. This is my car. So, kono wa kuruma desu, right? Whereas in Chinese it would be 支持我只吃. All right. Getting back on track. Okay, good. Everything got added the way that I wanted it to. Kono kunuma desu. Yep. I remember kanji a little. Well, like everybody who's not from this backwards country, you speak incredible English, and we speak embarrassingly poor every other language on Earth. So, congrats to you. I speak a little bit of French. That's okay. I'm trying to get better with Chinese. Git push. Okay. There's now working code in the repository, friends. But just the sysmon.py. I haven't added the Jupyter notebook yet. But that's on purpose. Because we want to figure out what we want to do with this. So one thing that might be something that might be kind of cool is to look at the events by event ID. So let's do a quick heading here. This would be called exploratory EDA, exploratory data analysis. So here we will create we'll look at the data frame.groupBy event ID, and we will aggregate by count. Well, yeah, I mean, not only do you have to learn the language, you have to learn a new alphabet. That's really difficult. And then sort values by equals... It doesn't actually matter what we sort by because they're all counts, right? And then ascending equals false. So now we're seeing the event IDs. Now this is a nice chart, but we could also, of course, have done this in a graph. How we would do that? We do px.bar with data frame x equals event ID. Title equals events by ID. Of course, the problem is that as the event ID, you know what? This is a reason to make the ID a string, not an int. So I'm going to fix that. The event ID can't be numerical data. It has to be nominal data or categorical data in order for this to work the way that I want. So let me just try that again. There, you see? And I'll even give it a color equals event ID so that it's colored separately. There we go. Look at that. Now we have this really cool way of seeing what the shape of our data set looks like. Obviously, we've got a lot of network connections. We have a few process creates, not that many, and a few others as well, which we haven't actually written constructors for, but that's okay. We definitely have a lot of ones, we have a lot of threes. Okay, well, with threes, network connections, what might we care about? What do we want to see? So for this section, we're going to start by asking... I'll actually do this in Markdown. Let's do this by port. So again, we can do it by graph or we can do it by table. Let's do it by bar. So df and then x equals... Oh, sorry, just kidding. First thing we're going to do is get just the event ID 3s. And because we have this in a data frame now, we can do this a slightly different way. We can see df, where df.event ID equals 3. Remember, we made that a string now. Now we can say px.bar with the data frame of event 3. And then the x is going to be dest port. And the color is also going to be dest port. And the title is going to be destination ports. So pretty much just remote desktop and then this 4444, which what is that all about? Right? We don't know, but it would be interesting to find out. So what we'll do now is we'll also create another question. Destination IPs. And let me comment this up. Or the destination IPs. Now we have px.bar event 3. The x will be dest IP. Color equals dest IP. Title equals destination IP. Now, interestingly, these seem to be pretty much mirrored in this particular data set. So one of the things I might do is just kind of combine these. How would I do that? Well, if I change the color to dest port, now I have this extra dimension of my data. It's difficult to see, but all of the destination RDP stuff was here, and then all the 4444 was here. The 10.3, 13.4, 34. I can zoom that in, of course, and I can see it a little bit more clearly. There's like nothing there. It's so small. because of the just the scope of it. Right, there's one packet that we're looking at here. It's auto scale. Yeah. And then from that, I might be interested in, you know, process IDs, things like that. I think that's a good stopping point for tonight, though. I will push the notebook as it is. And I'll to allow everyone else to play with it. And again, if you're interested in looking at the code, repo. That is where this is. So I think we're going to say goodnight. And let's see if there's anyone else streaming. Oh, Oreo Byte is streaming. Okay, cool. Let's send folks over to Oreo Byte. And so I will be back on Saturday doing some different blue team stuff. We're still going through the Try Hack Me rooms. Thank you so much, everyone who hung out. I hope you had a good time, and we'll continue with this next week to see if we can get this process even more refined. But until next time, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and happy hacking.